Good afternoon, everybody, or morning or evening, depending where you're joining us from. My name is Beth Fisher Yoshida. I am a professor of practice in the Master of Science in Negotiation and Conflict Resolution program in the School of Professional Studies at Columbia University in the city of New York. I'm very excited to host our panel today, Project Restore, Pathways to Peace and Community Safety. I'm going to do brief introductions, and then the flow will be that Gabe, once I introduce him, will be monitoring with Wesley and Titus. And then if you have any questions or comments, which we really encourage you to have, and to please share with us, look on the bottom of your screen at the Q&A box and just write those in. They will have a conversation for 20, 25 minutes or so, and then we will turn to the Q&A and comments, which we encourage you to write. Okay, so without further ado, I will introduce our panelists today, and we have Gabe Feldman, who, now all three of these people are associated with the Center for Justice at Columbia University, and the NECR program, which is the Negotiation and Conflict Resolution program, also partners with the Center of Justice, so we have a nice working relationship. And Gabe Feldman is the assistant program manager and a research staff assistant there. And I might add, a student in the NECR program. And also on the panel, we have Wesley Jeffries, again, part of Project Restore, part of the community justice advocate, transformational coach. He has quite a bit of stuff here on his bio there too, and facilitator, and also with the Center for Justice. And he is a student in business and psychology at Kingsborough Community College. And joining Gabe and Wesley, we have Titus Smith, also with Project Restore. He's a graduate of it, and a community justice advocate, facilitator and mentor, and also at the Center for Justice. And he is a student in mental health and human services, also at Kingsborough Community College. So I think that's great for introductions. And then as the conversation continues, then maybe you'll find out more about our wonderful panelists. So Gabe, I'll turn it over to you and take it away.
All right. So, hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel Feldman, as Beth mentioned. I work at the Center for Justice. I've been there for about 3 years. My background is originally in humanitarian aid, but I came to the center in 2022 and was program manager for this program for Project Restore, which was with a length of 2023. So the cadence of this is I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about just very briefly about the sort of problem of why Project Restore was needed, a little bit about the structure of the program, and then most of it is going to be conversation between Titus, Wesley, and myself talking about different facets of the program. Project Restore happened in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, which is a neighborhood in Brooklyn. That like several other neighborhoods, like you may have heard Brownsville or South Bronx, it is a red zone. It's has a high concentration of crime. A lot of what happens in these neighborhoods is structural. A lot of it happens because of structural inequalities and heavy marginalization that causes a lot of the inequities that come from it. We'll get into a little bit about sort of how and why these street crews develop, as well as talking about the difference between the term gang is thrown around a lot and often misused and misappropriated in terms of just it's simply not accurate often. Project Restore came out of another program that we run at the center called Justice Ambassadors. Justice Ambassadors is a policy by proximity model that takes system-impacted youth from around the city and government officials from as many different parts of government as possible and brings them together to learn together over 8 weeks, and then as well as co-authoring policy proposals. So Project Restore was one that actually came out of a previous cohort, out of the second cohort of Justice Ambassadors, when Jarrell Daniels, featured here on the left, actually invited Nigel Farina to one of the cohorts, and then he worked with him to develop Project Restore. Nigel Farina was Jarrell's prosecutor. So Jarrell served some 6 years in prison. Nigel Farina was the person who actually prosecuted his case. He was the chief gang prosecution at the time. The program was developed by essentially them combining their knowledge and expertise. Nigel talked about how much information they had on folks before they did gang takedowns, and that he often felt he was often sad at the after they had a takedown that they had all this information that they ended up doing nothing with. So a lot of identification, sort of uh, recognizing that there were a concentrated number of individuals who needed a lot of support, and Nigel had all of this information, but they essentially just put it in a shelf. So Jarrell essentially offered the idea to use that information, that sort of recognizing the identification of people who really needed support, and to use that as a backdrop for setting up holistic support, which is what Project Restore tried to do. That word gets tossed around quite a bit, but Project Restore really did try to fulfill that. So just briefly, obviously, gang takedowns are often the first tool that is used to interrupt retaliatory violence. It is obviously very punitive. It essentially tries to suppress and remove folks who are involved in a lot of that by putting them in prison. What happens, what has happened repeatedly, is that although those folks are removed, and the crime will go down in the short term, in the long term, about 6 to 12 months, it goes right back up. And that's because younger folks step into those roles and start to take on the same roles that of the folks who were there before, but they're doing it at a younger age. So they have less maturity, less leadership. And we'll get into a little bit of that, of sort of how that works. So Project Restore essentially was the idea was to try and interrupt before folks were put in prison, to give them as much targeted support as possible. It was made up of these 5 facets. One of the, and this will be the first question that I want to throw to Titus and Wesley. One of the foundational facets of the program that actually sort of, I would say, makes it quite different than a lot of other programs is that there was a meaningful pay. So it wasn't just, a lot of programs often have sort of stipends that are maybe a gift card or small cash stipends. Project Restore had $25 an hour for 20 hours a week for your engagement with the program. So this is for either of you, what was it like, and what was the significance of having that kind of substantial pay during Project Restore?
$25 an hour. It was very, very clutch. I would say it was clutch because you got to think most of the violence that goes on in the neighborhood, it stems from poverty. And being that a lot of people are unemployed in these high risk areas, so violence is more likely to happen. So being that we were getting paid, we were learning something new as far as having to take a schedule down and have to commit to something every day for the week, taking us off the street for a certain amount of hours. The pay was definitely, it was it, because if we didn't have it, I feel like it could have been way different, and we probably would have been discouraged. A lot of people want to change their life, but unfortunately, bills still have to be paid, and life still goes on. So being that we were getting paid to fix our life, it was like a double positive. Yeah, leave it with that.
How about you, Wes? How did the pay function in terms of sort of getting people in the door?
It was like the number one motivational thing from getting people in the door to getting people to engage. It was like paying them to get them to listen to what y'all had to say, basically.
And what was it like for you in the beginning? Because I know this was a program that there wasn't much precedent for, so there hadn't been a program like this. So it was something new that nobody knows what it's like. So it's a bit of a risk joining something like this. Why did you join?
I mean, I joined personally because all my friends was going, and then the stipend really caught my eye too. It was like $25 an hour for 20 hours a week. I'm like, all right, yeah, I could go grab that, and let's see what they talking about. And I think what made me stay was the credible messengers, was the program managers, you gave, and the care and the love that y'all have for us. That's what made me really engage more and stay.
So staying on that, what, programs have all kinds of staff. What made the staff at Project Restore different than some of the other kinds of other programs that you've interacted with?
I would say they met us where we was. They didn't judge us, and they never let up on us, and they never gave up on us. So like I would say, like myself per se, I made 1,000 mistakes during Project Restore. Maybe I mean I joined certain programs and joined certain stuff and quit, and they never made me feel like, oh, you just that's just it for you. You got to give up. They just always, let's try something else. Let's do this. Let's do that. They kept me moving and kept me motivated. That's the difference between. I feel like they care, but we felt like they care.
Definitely. I would say on my behalf, like I really wanted to lock in once at the beat. Project Restore started January 2023, 24, 23, I think.
Beginning of 2023. Yep.
Beginning of 2023. I was actually shot in February 2023. February, I got shot like a month into the program starting. And I think we only got paid around like once around that time. We were really just getting started with the internships and everything. And that was a very pivotal moment in my life where I feel like I could have easily went into doing something that was negative for me. But the support that I got, and mind you, this is supposed to be like, don't get me wrong, like you guys were our case managers and our mentors, but we didn't really know you guys. So for y'all to come see me in the hospital, help me with a lot of things, help my mother when I was going through that process, only after, like I would say like about 2-3 weeks of me knowing y'all, after that I was fully locked in. That was a very, very, very crazy moment. And I feel like I ain't have support from the people that I was supposed to have support from. And you guys were there. So to me, it was a little, it was more personal. I'm pretty sure everybody could say they different reason for why they locked in. But that's really why I locked in. I was like, I feel like I owed you guys something because, y'all was there for me at a tough time. And we were just really meeting. So, it was a lot for me at the time. And then everything else that came with it was just therapeutic after that. So I would say that's what really made me lock in. Back to what Wesley said, like the showing that you care, like some people can't fake that they care. And we have a lot of programs that come in our neighborhood, but it don't be nobody we could relate to and nobody act like they really care. So for you guys to stick around, do certain things and show certain gestures, I know that it was actually genuine rather than just it being a program and we're just being participants.
How about still staying on the staff and sort of what it was like to interact with them? A lot of the staff were formerly incarcerated or had system involvement. What was it like meeting someone like folks like Jarrell, like Tyler, like Pablo? What did these people, what did their backgrounds mean to you? What did their story mean to you?
Well, to me, they stories meant a lot to me because it'll be hard for somebody to tell you could change or you could do this and they never been through what you've been through before or they never came from the areas you came from before. So they success stories was more like a Cinderella story to me at first because I was like, I never heard nobody come home and start a program or come home and go to school. Or it's usually always the negative after the negative. They were showing me like after the storm, it could be sunshine.
It's like, I don't know, the roster that we have at PRB, it was well blended. It was well blended. The credible part was super credible. Like everybody was relatable. Everybody was damn near from Brooklyn or from New York. So that just that alone, it was like a great connection. We could ask them certain things. They was in the generation above us. And we kind of told them what was going up to date in our generation and we kind of blended that and certain about conversations. And that really strengthened our relationships too. Like once we realized, these guys actually had the mindset that we once had and they was able to change it despite what happened. And they went through a lot of hardship that we didn't really go through yet. So it was still hope for us. That's how I looked at it.
Thinking about other parts of the staff, so there were Inside Circle was a program that was developed in California, in Folsom Prison. It was developed inside, so it was developed by folks who were serving long sentences. You guys want to walk through a little bit what what that program, how it worked? Just a sort of idea so folks can get an idea of what Inside Circle was like for you.
All right, so Inside Circle is a program that was made by formerly incarcerated men, right? It was supposed to be a restorative healing circle. Now, mind you, these guys are all from California, and they were in some of the worst prisons known in the United States. And they were having real wars at that time, as far as race wars and a lot of things. And they was able to come together and do a spiritual healing circle inside prison when they were still incarcerated. The power that they seen in it through certain exercises led to them being released from their behavior, and they continued to make it a program where they go back into prisons and they get more inmates and try to help out with their sentences, and the people that come home takes over and now be the credible messengers for the healing circles, and they do it for other inmates in other states. So it's like a repetitive cycle. So it's more of a therapeutic session of a vulnerable space, usually formed in a circle. We sit down and we talk about things that we usually can't talk about in the neighborhood or anywhere else.
Wes, what's an example of some of the things that would get brought up in Circle?
Maybe the mirror effect. Is like you say something, you say what you've been through in your life, and somebody else repeat it to you. And that kind of helped me understand that I wasn't like a regular, like I didn't have a normal life at first, because we tend to think that us living in the circumstances we was living in was normal, like violence and poverty. We kind of tend that that's normal. But when I heard my life story come from somebody else's a mouth, it kind of made me feel like, dang, I've been through all of that.
How about you, Titus? What was something that stuck out during Inside Circle that you remember?
It was one, well, it's two things. The power of I, that's one. When you talk about something and you're talking to somebody, if you trying to give advice or if you're trying to talk to somebody, always say I. Don't never say, you should do this or I think you should do that. Say, if I was in your shoes, I would do this or I would do that. It just helps better communication wise, and that changes a lot. And one of the exercises, it would be they had a sit in a circle, right? We all rotated, but one person sit in a circle. Everybody else in the room stands up and tell this person that's in the chair something that they like about them or appreciate about them. And this is an exercise, like it sounds so simple, but every person that got in the chair literally cried. Everybody cried. And I knew some of my friends, I would say damn near all my life. And those is things that I never heard them say to each other ever. So it was a powerful moment. It was something that was, you only could say positive things. It was somebody sitting in the chair, everybody in the room go around saying something positive about that person in the chair. And then we rotate and the next person go. And after that, like everybody's spirits is high. It was a lot of love in the room. And mind you, we all been friends for years, but I feel like those specific exercises brought us a little closer. Definitely.
It's funny you mentioned that. So negotiation, conflict resolution, a lot of it, obviously, a lot of the things that have come up, at least so far in I'm only in my first semester, but is around communication and that I statement. So I had the pleasure of being able to sit in these circles, and I remember when every once in a while there'd be new guys that would come in, and they would start saying, "Oh, when you're upset and you're really going crazy." And I remember you guys would correct him, and it wasn't in an antagonistic way, but you would explain how much of a difference it makes to share from your own experience. And I think communication, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but the piece around the clarity of this is how I feel and not necessarily projecting it or getting miscommunicated of I'm telling you how you feel has a huge impact on those kind of interactions.
Yeah, and one of the beautiful things that you're talking about is that everything you've discussed so far is so incredibly powerful, as you've stated, but all seemingly very simple. It's like just a recognition of each person's humanity. And then when you speak from that I statement, you're owning your own feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Titus mentioned that's the first time you've heard certain people say certain things, even though you've known them forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I always think sometimes in conflict resolution, we have to think of something magical, something phenomenal, something big, you know, to make a difference. But then I see from what you're saying and from my own experience of working in the field, little things, they seem like little things, but the power is tremendous. So yeah.
I guess one thing that one aspect of Project Restore that I think is worth mentioning is that we were working with two groups in Bed-Stuy, who were rival street formations, and they didn't know that we were working with both sides. So, Wes or Titus, do you guys want to talk about? Did you know? When did you find out? What was it like to find out that that the program was working with folks who you had beef with?
I mean, I didn't know. I'm not gonna lie and say I knew. So I ain't know. But I had a hunch because they would always ask like what did I feel about sitting down with other side. And that was like what piqued my interest. So why do they care? But I did remember saying like if I sit down with them, y'all had to be doing the same type of things y'all was doing with us. Like I do remember saying that. So I guess I was okay with it as long as everybody was receiving the same services.
How about you, Titus?
At first, I kind of had a feeling because y'all was kind of moving funny, like around, I would say like around the 6-7 month, y'all started asking different questions. Y'all started seeing how far, you know, and it was repetitive. Like you said, I asked one time and then we kind of brushed it off. And like a week later, we would do it and then y'all would ask again. So, I knew it made sense. I knew it made sense. In my head, I'm like, there's no way it's gonna work if it's one sided anyway. Like it can't be one group getting paid and moving up positively and the other groups in the same spot, because eventually we're going to find a way to get back on the same level, whether it's for good or for bad. So that's how I looked at it. And
So I'll challenge both of you a little bit. I think I was probably, besides maybe Unique and Matilda, who were other staff members, I think I was probably at the most programming for every of anyone. And the only reason that any of the staff felt comfortable asking these questions of like, would you sit down with the other side? What do you think? Because we were told and took it very seriously to keep everything very separate and to not share, because it was real beef, and you know, the potential of danger was significant. So we would have never brought anything up if you guys didn't start to say things like, why aren't you doing this with the other side? Or you guys should. One of the funny things was you guys would say, well, not you guys. We don't want you to work with the other side, but the other side should get programming like this, just not from you specifically. So we wouldn't have felt and that, Titus, like you said, that happened probably about the 6-month mark, so about halfway through. What do you think? I guess pivoting a little bit, what was it like then to sit down with each other? Because both of you were at a sit down where there were folks from both sides. What was that like?
Well, to be clear, to let everybody know. All right, so this historical conflict that he's talking about is between two street crews located in Bed-Stuy area. I'm from Roosevelt houses. Wesley is from Sumner/Tompkins houses, and basically it's been an ongoing war that's been going on for about, I would say, like 10+ years. Us getting programs came out of, unfortunately, 2 indictments that came from both of our projects in 2021. And from there, we've been trying to change the narrative. Hence these programs that came out that helped us, like Project Restore and me and Gabe and nice people. So I just wanted to put that out there for people who didn't know. And I would say like it was definitely something that never happened before. I think it took a lot of bravery on our parts to really sit down and realize that we probably could be able to sit down with people from like opposing sides with us. I think Inside Circle played the biggest part in that though. Inside Circle was like, as we said before, it was real therapeutic, and the people that was in there were people who was locked up for murders and stuff. And these guys came home and now are credible messengers. So I feel like if they told me like if they told me that I was doing the right thing and that I was young and we could really change the narrative, being that we all young and we didn't have to go to prison to do these certain things in jail, and we could change our narrative. Like, of course, I knew a lot of people wasn't gonna, probably be on our side about it, and I put a lot of things on the line as far as credibility and bravery come from where I'm from. But for the most part, ever since we've been sitting down with Wesley, it's like we connected within the first circle, very first circle we connected. From there, we made a vow we would try to get more and more people every time. And from there, we had community conversations where we invited 2 to 3 more people from each side. And it showed the respect that we have for each other, that, like, we've been around each other. We go to school together. We've been around each other other times. We planning on how we could get our bros to necessarily get on the same page, being realistic, not saying that, a lot of things have happened within this war, but we got to come on an agreement of what safety looks like going forward. We've been through a lot of stuff already. We're not getting no younger. We only got another generation that's after us. And we already just had an indictment that happened in our neighborhood. So somebody got to change the narrative, whether if people feel a way about it or not. We can't be doing this. And out of this, we was able to sit down with police. I was able to sit down with the police, have community conversations, and we had some of the police members come up to justice ambassadors after to do programming with us. So the work is real. Like, I feel like it was just the trying something new part that we had to get over. And once we got over that shell, it was just flowing ever since then.
Wes, I just want to we're gonna wrap up soon and get to the questions, but I just want to ask, what's it like starting to see some of your friends get more involved or more comfortable with the idea of being part of the public safety working group? How does that conversation go? What is that like?
It's amazing. I feel like this is something that when I first got doing this stuff, when I first started being a credible messenger, I felt like a lot of times when I was going to stuff and doing a lot of stuff, I was on my own. Mostly because I felt like I had to show people that I was serious for them to take it serious. So I felt like I was on my own a lot. And I didn't feel like people actually noticed or seen what I was doing, but people actually watched and followed me every step I took, to the point where I had people asking me like, "Can I do that? Or how do you do that? Or how you feel so comfortable speaking? Or how you feel so comfortable being around other people from the other side?" And I tell them like, "Yo, all you gotta do is just take one foot and just do it. Just don't think about it. Just do it." And it just made me feel like we could do anything. Like, that's what PRB gave me, confidence in myself and in my community, to make us feel like we could step up and rise up to any occasion that we need to.
This will be the last one that I want to ask, just because it was fairly recent. For both of you, what was your Wesley? You invited Jason to come play in a basketball game. Before you talk about what that was like, Titus, from your perspective, can you talk about how significant that is, and maybe why it is significant of Wesley inviting Jason to come play in a basketball game in Tompkins?
Well, I'm gonna be honest, that ain't never happened before. You know what I mean? So that's why it's significant, because it's showing that the power that we have, like, that we are getting from our communities now, that, somebody from my projects to just go over there and, he's with Wes, he's good, and everybody showed him love. He played basketball, showed that a real change is happening. Even if it's a slow process, and even if it's only one person, is very big, because, eventually it'll be more. And the goal is to have it so, like, it won't be like, you from this project, you shouldn't be able to come here. That's the goal, to change the mindset of it. We growing a lot in the neighborhood as far as, like, what credibility used to look like for us. Some things that we used to care about, we don't necessarily care about anymore. Like, and it helped us grow a lot. And stuff like that made me proud. Jason is my cousin, and for me to see that, like, with my own 2 eyes, it was powerful, and it was real powerful. And I want to appreciate Wes for that, because ever since I met Wes been a man in his word. It was no funny intentions ever since we had the first talk. And ever since then. And a lot of things have happened in the neighborhood that could have easily deflected our relationship, and we didn't. So I know it's strong. I know it's something.
There's so much that we could keep talking about.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm cutting this off is because I wanna hear what some of the other folks have to say. Also, for everyone on the webinar, if you scan this QR code, there's a report that we did at the end of the program, that at some point there will be a follow-up report, but right now this is the outcomes from the year of Project Restore.
So Gabe, did you want to, I think Wes wanted to say something about inviting Jason to a basketball game. Was that right, Wes? You wanted to say something about that?
Oh yes, I'm more so when I invited Jason to the basketball game, I more so purposely did it in a way where I knew that people was gonna be like, "Oh, that's never before done before," because we also had me and Titus. We always had these talks about walking up the Garvey, and people be thinking like, "Yo, y'all crazy for thinking like walking up the Garvey," but like nobody. I don't think we haven't did that since kids, like because it haven't been safe enough for us to start from Broadway and end at Fulton. And we was thinking like, yo, one day we got to do a march just to show how peaceful it really is, like just to show people that it's not a gimmick, it's not a. So I felt like we had to take little steps to doing that. Like, so the basketball game was the first start, and then Titus is having like little workout camps in RV, and I'm waiting for him to invite me. I'm just throwing that out there.
You know you can blow
So
it.
it's like that. It's like that. It's just to show the world that
Mm.
this is actually happening. We're not just talking about it and then 5 minutes later there's nothing going on. Behind the scenes, we actually put in the work also too, to make sure that our communities are safe.
Super. So we have a couple of comments and questions, and one overarching impression I have just from reading them is there's a lot of love and appreciation for you coming on today and talking about your experience. So that's overarching. So the first question really is, hey, I really love hearing about this program and from both Wesley and Titus about their experiences. If I understand correctly, do members from both groups actively interact within the same sessions? And if so, how is the negotiation and collaborative approach between the two groups coming together as one to build a better atmosphere and future for themselves? So did the two groups come together, and how did that happen?
Yes, we had after. All right, so the first sit down was about November. It was just me, Jason, and then somebody else, and it was Wesley and two other members. From us 6 people meeting with each other, we was hired from Columbia to do an internship together, and it was about 10 of us. I would say 5 and 5 from each side, and for about I would say about 2 months, we had consecutive every week. We had community conversations where we would have both sides, and we would come up to Columbia. We would sit there. We would eat together. We would talk together. We would we would talk about like certain things that's of course happening in our neighborhoods, and we would try to like being that me, Wes, and Jason already like sat down before everybody else. It was like really just us being the moderators of the conversation and steering it to leave all of our other friends like open minded as well.
Wes, you want to talk about what the first sit down was like, and like what the activity was, what they had you guys doing?
So the first sit down, it was kind of a smooth sailing, but I used a trick out of one of my mentors' book to like lighten the mood. I threw on the whole suit, glasses, and I wanted them to take me serious or laugh at me. They did a little bit of both, so that was cool. It kind of lightened the mood. But the exercise we did, we was blind. When we first walked in, we got blindfolded, and I know this is crazy because we knew that we was going in a room with people that was from like opposing neighborhoods. But we trusted the staff so much, we allowed it. They blindfolded us and made us write down what we think was gonna get out of this. Cards that we wrote down on, we all got our cards like simultaneously, and it was everybody wrote something positive besides one card, I think. And I think that's what really like shifted the narrative and changed and calmed everybody down, because we realized like, all right, everybody wants something positive to come out of this meeting. And I think that was like lighting the mood. And at the end of the meeting, we all promised that this wouldn't be a one-off thing. And we kept our promise. And that's why I feel like it was so strong and lasted so long to this day.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So the next person just wrote a comment. She said, thank you for holding the seminar. She needs to leave, but she's been living in Bed-Stuy for the past 5 years. And she's happy to hear about how this program unfolded. And by the way, she's a graduate of the NECR program. So thank you for that. Now we have another question. First, Thank you both for being vulnerable and open with your experiences in this space. My question is, when you were involved in the programming, did you receive any negative criticism or down talk from friends who decided not to join the program? And if so, how did you address that?
It's a really good question.
Definitely a lot of negativity coming from people in the neighborhood and stuff. But what I would say is doing this kind of work, like I always thought that things that I've done in my past as a kid that were like according to street codes made me like a man. But me just being able to sit down and work with Wesley and everybody else, that showed me who my real friends really are. Like anybody who I feel like things didn't go forward or things started getting a little shaky after that happened, I feel like it was part of, like, I was supposed to lose those kind of people. Like, it was growing pains. And I ain't gonna say it was easy, like, people just agree with it. And of course, people always gonna have something to say in the neighborhood. But for the most part, we growing as people, we doing things we never considered ourselves doing years ago. So it's like, and the crazy part about us, like, having the bravery to keep going is that eventually we always get at least one more person that changes their mind. So it's not like people don't agree with us. It's just that maybe some people aren't as comfortable in their skin to be as brave. So, that's probably why we get negativity over it. But the people who are, they eventually join us. They give positive talks, even if it's from afar, even if it's not publicly, even if it's just in my inbox or to me. Some people, people see it, people notice it, and more people want to do it, and it's changing my narrative about how people view me. So I feel like it wasn't nothing that, even though it was a lot of negativity that came with it, wasn't nothing that was worth it. Everything that I lost, it wasn't worth like keeping it. So
Wesley, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I would say the same thing, similar. Like, I got backlash at first because people didn't understand and why was I trusting certain people and why was I so open to doing certain things. But I felt like if we didn't do it, then nobody would. Like, I felt like it took more courage to do the things that I was doing than to not to do it. Like, it takes more courage to change than it is to keep the same things going on. So I feel like we was kind of the bravest ones of all, and I felt like that was a mission that I personally had to take part in.
I'll second that just in saying that, I mean, you guys are now facilitating younger folks in both your neighborhoods as well as in other neighborhoods. And that sort of public safety working group of folks who are comfortable sitting down with people on the other side has grown really significantly since from those first 3 and 3. So I just want to uplift both of you that you're standing behind your word, and you're putting in the work in your community and in other communities as well.
Another person said, I love hearing the positivity and incredible outcome. And they want to know a little bit about the internship career building you've had and the opportunities available after the program. Also, how has the program continued to support you after graduating?
I had so many internships. I had a culinary internship with Drive Change. I had an internship with the Brownsville organization. They kind of throw us in a bunch of stuff, GED preparations, anything that you want to do with your life. They make sure that they find a program or a class for you to take. And afterwards, they put us on a they put me well because I was like, I want the public speak. So they had me at all of these community engagement events. I flew over the world. I got to take the train. I got to speak in front of 1 million people, and they sharpened my skills every trip. And they kind of followed me to this day. My case manager checks on me. Did you go to school? Did you complete your work? And program been over. And I'm kind of like the credible messenger now. They still treat me like the participant. It's still the same level of love and respect. They follow you on even after the program is done. They still check on you and still make sure you're keeping up with. Even after the program done, we still one big community, still one big family. I feel like.
yeah, and we were hired after the like right after the program was ended. We was hired like I said for the internship to me and Wesley, our jobs was to bring more people in. So being that we practicing our peer facilitation and we do this restorative healing circles, and me and him both actually been in prisons. Like we got flown out to go to prisons to speak to other people. We try the same practice with our friends from our community, and we was getting paid to do that, and we still are. We still internships, Columbia, and then of course they helped us get into school, and we soon graduate that. So ever since Project Restore been done, of course, it was still hands-on right after. Nothing really changed.
There's 10 of y'all that are in college now. I think
10,
that's a really significant thing for everyone to have accomplished.
So
10.
I think this question also asks, like, what percent, like how many total participants have gone through the program? And you see 10 are now in college. Do we have those numbers?
30 of us went through the program. 10 of us is in college. I would say more now because La just joined college. So it's a lot of people that's joining college and people getting jobs or taking trade schools. I want to say this though. If they didn't get into college, they definitely were better off than what they was when they started. Like they're employed or chasing employment or chasing GED or something is going on. It's not like they just ain't going to college and that's it. Some people started off lower than others. So some people progress is faster. Everybody is different.
That's good perspective on that. Yeah,
Do you
thank you for
guys want
sharing
to
that
talk
part.
a little bit about, so throughout the program, there were the core 30, right? 15 and 15. And then that started to grow, even though initially there was only pay for those 30, Do you want to talk about why folks would come in if they weren't getting paid and what that was like?
It's because you got to think about it, right? So if we all hang out with each other in the neighborhood where things are more likely for us to come up with a bad idea, it's like if you got 10 friends, right? And now all 9 of them, you don't see them usually in the building where we used to talk. Now they in programming. It's like, all right. It's like, it was kind of that reverse peer pressure. Like being that if you weren't there, you feel like you were missing out on something. And I feel like that was the best part about it. That a lot of people, were a little rocky at first, but the more that certain people stuck to it, people realized like, all right, the guys are gonna go there anyway. I'm getting paid for it. I think it really started to kick in like a little after, like, all right, we only talk about positive things and I'm getting paid for it. So it's like I could save myself twice versus just being outside and I gotta, try to make money and then it might be other things. So being that we all did it together was like the main part. Like, because trying something new was always the biggest step. So for us to do it together collectively, it was like, all right, it was more people were more confident doing it that way, I would say. Like doing the programming, having case managers, having people check on them. People were more comfortable with it.
Okay, I'm going to share another positive comment here. Thank you so much for hosting this, and to both Wesley and Titus for sharing so openly. It is so incredibly meaningful to hear stories like this. Can't get enough of those good comments, right? Now, another person asked, I remember earlier you mentioned that there was some negativity, you had some backlash. Were any of those who spoke negatively initially change their minds later?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, those. It's crazy. But that's how we know, like, because mind you, PRB ended 2024, the beginning of 2024. So now it's about to be 2026. Ever since Project Restore ended, we've been making sure we work with each other. We host our own community conversations in the neighborhood that other spaces let us use so we could be more comfortable, like in our own environment. And like a lot of people who weren't on board before are on board now. Whether if it's, I'm not gonna say that they just probably wanted to change their life. Maybe it's something in it for them. Maybe they need help with something, or they just need the money temporarily. But it don't really matter. I feel like all of that is a work in progress. A lot of people are getting out of the fixed mindset that they had growing up in the neighborhood and being programmed a certain way, and now are seeing their friends and stuff. And mind you, we've been like this for a lot of years of our life. So for these last 2 to 3 years to just start changing now, even if it's small steps, it's a lot of progress because we've been programmed for a way for 15 plus years. And once your brain works a certain way, it's kind of hard to get out of things. So it's actually working. So nonetheless, no matter the progress, it's working. Even if we get one person, if I could get one more person to come from our projects, and Wesley could get one more person to come from his projects every event, and we could just change the mindset of one more person, then that person would eventually change the mindset of another person. And that's how we look at it.
Create a critical mass. Wesley, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I was gonna add on like it's the domino effect. The people we touch people. They touched us. Our job is to touch people and have them touch other people. It's just how it goes.
Great. And we have somebody here who said, what can individuals like me who aren't directly part of the community do to support and contribute to the program's impact? Now's your chance to ask for something.
I mean, donate to the cause. We need a lot of funders. We need a lot of or apply for case management and mentor jobs. We need a lot of people with hands-on experience. Everybody experience matter. You don't necessarily have to be from the community. You just have to show a little consideration and care. You know what I'm saying? That's all.
Yeah, I feel like in order, like people say, it takes a village. So everybody has a specific role that they are very relevant in playing in the community. So you don't necessarily have to be from here to relate or know certain people that probably been through it. Or if you even just study the community and you just want to do it based off that, everything helps. I was just saying, like, specifically, like Project Restored, like it had a good blend of people. But honestly, other programs, it will still work, whether if you have certain people there or not who are from the community. It just takes, like you said, it takes patience and it takes a lot of love. It got to be genuine. It got to be something that you really want to do versus, a paycheck for you, or you'll get a little overwhelmed. Got to deal with other people's problems and keep them on track when you still fighting your own life problems and stuff like that. So make sure it's something that you really want to do before you get into the work, I would say.
I'll offer as well, especially because for folks who are in classes now, look for volunteer opportunities with community organizations. There will be connections that come from that, or experiences, or skills that you learn about yourself from those kind of internships that will help guide not only your own trajectory, but you'll find opportunities to really be able to lean into and meaningfully support. So look for volunteer opportunities. We had an open house at the center recently. I think we'll probably try and have one every semester for NECR students. So lean into things like that.
That's good. So I have another comment and then we'll have some requests here. It is so heartening to hear about this program, and to Wesley and Titus, it's impressive how open you're willing to be and how hard you work to make real progress and change. I'm wondering if you have any advice or takeaways from the program for how we could take similar steps to change the narrative and bring people together in our current political environment in the US. That's a hot one.
It's a heavy one.
Any advice?
I would say create a system, because we created a system. Like when something goes wrong with what we have built, me and Titus or me and Jason, we get on a call, or me and Jay, we get on a call. We try to figure out what ways we could better improve stuff together. I feel like making a model where y'all could kind of like go over what's going wrong and try to figure out how to patch things up. Whether it's government, whether it's whatever you're doing, you got to create a system for that.
It's a lot of people out there in this world who just could be great people, but they just already faced a lot of setbacks in life. Being that these guys met us where we were, like as far as like, you got to look at it. If PRB was a job rather than a program, half of the participants would already not have made it, because we didn't have IDs when the program started. We didn't have certain documentation. We never worked a job before. Didn't have resumes. We didn't have stuff like that. So being that it was accessible to all of us, and during the program we was able to attain these things, like, and even little things like life skills and learning about how our neighborhood was designed and really seeing it from a different view, that kind of changed everything. Like it's good to just give people money and tell people like you should just do this for your life and do that, but when you give it to them from a different experience and you show them something that they never really thought about how they lived, because like Wesley said, we never thought our neighborhoods was anything other than normal growing up in it, because we seen so much people just go through it and it's just a cycle, and that's just how we were programmed. But to get out of it and see different experiences and meet people from other places, and now we getting more educated about how our neighborhood is designed, I feel like it made it a little harder for us to continue down the same road after we were already educated. So it's cool to pay people and stuff, but it's life skills in the neighborhood that need to be taught in order to prevent certain things from happening. Like, don't get me wrong, poverty is the connection to violence and everything, but it's also trauma. It's also the lack of communication. It's also people just simply not having nothing else to do with their life. So the fact that we were taken off the street to be in programming and doing internships at the same time, the fact that we were learning new skills, and on top of that, we were getting paid for it. All of those blend together is what made everything. I feel like if any one of those little things would have been taken out, it still could have went either way. Or when the program was over, if it was just about money, then everything, the violence could have went right back up as soon as the programming was done. But obviously we learned new skills, and I feel like we literally changed everything in the mindset of that by going through these hard circles and internships and the life skills and the lessons. So it got to be a perfect blend. It can't just be one without the other. It can't just be like we giving these guys money, but we not really showing them love, or we not really checking in, or we really checking in, but we not really paying them, or we paying them and checking in, but we not showing them nothing new. It got to be all three together.
Nice summary there. So it's a nice integrated program.
Mm-hmm.
So I did want to thank our guests. Thank you, Gabe, Wesley, and Titus for joining us today. So a couple of other announcements here. If you want to find out, that's participants, if you want to find out more about this program, more about the NECR program, more about the Center for Justice, I have a couple of recommendations. Reach out. Just continue to stay in contact with the NECR program, and we will be able to send you information.